Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in this range report, we're going to be taking a look at yet another Glock chambered in 45 ACP. In fact, this is the third one I've done recently. I started off with the Glock 21 Gen 4, then I said, hey, that shot pretty good. Let's try the longer barreled version, the Glock 41 Gen 4. Well, now we're on to the compact or subcompact 45 ACP Glock, the Glock 30. Now, the reason I said subcompact or compact is I'm not really sure what this is supposed to be. According to Glock, this is a subcompact pistol, but when you really hold it and look at its dimensions, it's kind of thick. I don't know. Is it really a subcompact? It feels more like a compact gun, but they only make two different sizes when it comes to 45 ACP. Full size and what they say is subcompact. Unlike the 9mm pistols, which come in the full-size compact and subcompact. Now, there are variants of this gun like the 30S that some people say is truly a subcompact, but that slide is just a little bit thinner, but the frame is the same width. And there is the single stack version of this gun called the Glock 36, which I will be reviewing shortly. But for me, this is a compact gun. Others say it's a subcompact gun, but I'm curious what you think if you've ever held one. For me, it's just too big to be a subcompact. The Glock 30, as far as I can tell, was introduced in 1998. Now, there seems to be some erroneous information out there on the internet when I was doing some research on this gun, saying this gun was developed in the late 1980s. But Glock introduced all of their models in numeric order. The Glock 26 was introduced in 1994, and as far as I can tell, there was never a Gen 1 or Gen 2 Glock 30. They started on the Gen 3s. And I found some information saying they were released in 1998 alongside the Glock 29, which is chambered in 10mm. So if you do your own research or know anything about the Glock 30, you might find that there's some contradictory information out there. But everything seems to lead to this being released in the late 1990s. Obviously, being chambered in 45 ACP, it is primarily marketed to the US consumer that is interested in concealed carry pistols, because Americans just love 45 ACP. So this is going to be a really interesting gun to take to the range and find out how it shoots. But before we do that, there are a few people I need to give a huge shout out to. First and foremost is the owner of this pistol who lent it to the channel for review. He's a local fan and subscriber, and also the husband of my wife's best friend. His name is Bill. So Bill, thank you again for lending another one of your Glocks for me to review. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not create this content without them. And if you want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there is a link in the description below, and you'd get to see all of these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who provides all of the ammunition for these range reports and makes them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And as I just mentioned, the 45 ACP is an American classic. Everyone loves the Colt 1911 and all of its variants, and most likely if you're here to watch a gun being reviewed in 45, you probably own a 1911, and you might be looking to class up your 1911 collection with some custom grips. Well, the grip company you need to check out is Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. But the 1911 is one of Mark's specialties. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, finish the grips in a wide variety of colors, create his own laminate woods, and even apply exotic materials like snake skin and alligator skin, making these grips unique and one of a kind. Pretty much anything you can imagine he can create. So I'm going to put a link to his website in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. I'm going to ask you to go over there and check out everything he has to offer, and when you place your first order for a set of Brownworks custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so we have a lot to talk about when it comes to this pistol. I want to show you all of its features and go over all of its specs. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera. Let's get some close-ups of this gun and test out the trigger. So let's get some close-ups of this Glock 30 Gen 3, and we know it's a Gen 3 because this model has the finger grooves. The Gen 2s and Gen 1 Glocks did not have those, but as I mentioned, as far as I can tell, there were no Glock 30 Gen 2s or Gen 1s. Now, the owner of this pistol, Bill, tells me he bought this very early on, so probably around 1998 when they were introduced, and it came with one of the old Tupperware boxes. I'm not really sure when they phased these out either. So, this is a 45 ACP compact or subcompact pistol. It has a 10-round capacity. It has a barrel length of 3.78 inches, an overall length of 6.97 inches. It is 1.38 inches wide, and that is pretty wide for a pistol of this size. It has a height of 4.8 inches. Its overall weight is 26.28 ounces, and according to Glock's website, it has a trigger pull of 28 newtons, which translates into 6.29 pounds. So that is the next thing that I do want to test. So I'm going to get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge. I'm going to show you the take up and reset of this trigger, as well as test it out to see if that pull weight is accurate. So being a Glock, I know you either absolutely love them or you hate them. It just kind of depends on your personal preferences. I personally like the way Glock triggers are so consistent. Now, as I said, according to their website, this gun has a 6.29 pound trigger pull, which seems to be a little bit heavier than the standard 5.5 pounds that you find on most duty Glocks. But typically, these trigger pulls are going to feel the same and sound the same. So let's go ahead and drop the magazine, ensure there is no ammunition in it, and of course, visually inspect the chamber and ensure there is no ammunition in the gun. Looks like we are clear. So the initial take-up is like every other Glock. It's a little bit mushy, but this trigger doesn't seem to have as much take-up as some of the other Glocks I have reviewed. It still is a little bit mushy though. Then when it comes to the reset, relatively short for a Glock, and that is a tactile and audible reset, little bit of mush, and the trigger breaks pretty darn crisp. I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge, clear any averages, and let's see what the actual pull weight of this trigger is. For our first pull, we have 6 pounds, 9.3 ounces. So it looks like their website is spot on. 5 pounds, 12.1 ounces. Six pounds, 8.8 ounces. £5, 2.3 ounces, and the gauge slipped there a little bit because of the blade safety, so that one might be a little bit of an outlier. £6, 6.8 ounces. I'm going to do a few more pulls on this just to see if we can balance out all of these variations in the trigger pull. 6 pounds, 2.7 ounces. And finally, we have 6 pounds, 4.3 ounces, which gives us an average of 6 pounds, 2.0 ounces, which honestly is right where Glock says that trigger should be. So I guess I can't be disappointed. It is truth in advertising. So that is what this gun is all about. That's all of its features and specs. So now let me readjust the camera and I'll talk about the things that I like and don't like before taking it to the range. And of course, before going to the range, I always like to talk about the things that I like and don't like about every gun that I am reviewing. And I always want to start with the positive first. And pretty much everything on this list is going to be consistent with the Glock 21 and the Glock 41 that I recently reviewed. And this consistency is the first thing I love about this gun. Whether I'm shooting a 9mm, 10mm, 45 ACP, 40 Smith & Wesson, full-size, compact, subcompact Glock, they all feel the same in my hand. They all shoot a little bit low and to the left. They all look the same, and they all come apart the same. This consistency between each model is something that I really appreciate from a mechanical standpoint, which means if you love the Glock, you're gonna love all Glocks. If you don't like the Glock, you're not gonna like any of them. I also love the simplicity of the Glock design. They're made with very few parts. Mechanically, they're a very efficient design. This means these guns are very easy to disassemble for cleaning and maintenance, as well as changing out any parts. And speaking about changing out parts, the last thing I love about this gun is the huge aftermarket. If there is something about this gun you don't like, pretty much you can find a company that makes an upgraded version of that part that you can swap out. So in some ways, it's like the Legos for adults in the world of pistols. So that's pretty darn cool. Now, there are two things about this gun that I don't like, and both of them deal with its dimensions. The first thing is how thick this gun is. I talked about in my review of the Glock 21 and 41 that because these are 45 ACP double stack pistols, the magazines are kind of thick, which means the frames are thick, which means they made the slides thick. I think this is a difficult gun to conceal carry, especially in the summer months. Because of that dimension, it's definitely going to print. The other dimension that I don't like about this gun is its height. Now, I do have an aftermarket base plate on this magazine. So every magazine that I'm going to use in this review, Bill, the owner, has added that little pinky extension. But if you were running a flush fit magazine, that is as tall as this gun gets. You only get 2 fingers on that grip. And being that it is a 45 ACP pistol, it's going to recoil a little bit more than 9mm. So I kind of feel like from the factory, they need to offer these grip extensions or have the frame be just a little bit longer. I would really like to see them make this a thinner gun that's a little bit taller. Now, I do know some people are going to say, Jason, there is a Glock 30S with a thinner slide. Yes, there is, and I will be reviewing one of those soon. And there's also a single stack version of this gun called the Glock 36. And those are known to be plagued with some reliability issues. So I'm kind of curious how that one is going to shoot at the range. But that's the things that I like and don't like about this pistol. So now it's time to get this gun to the range, and I hope it's going to shoot just as good as its bigger brothers, the G21 and the G41. So as always, we're going to start off with the target at 7 yards. Because this is only a 10-round magazine, I'll put 2 mags through it, and we'll just see if I can shoot this gun accurately, how it feels in my hand, and we'll come back here to the garage and we'll talk about any differences that I discover about it between the Glock 21, the 41, and this compact or subcompact version of the 45 ACP Glocks. And this was kind of a surprising result. I'm shooting this better than I do the 21 and the 41, and this even has a shorter sight radius. Somebody over on the Texas Gun Vault 2 mentioned when I was telling them that I was going to be reviewing this gun, they said that's actually a more accurate gun than the full size because the shorter barrel means the projectile is leaving the gun before the slide begins to reciprocate and unlock. Is that the truth and the case in this matter? I don't know. But I can tell you, just with my first impressions, this gun is more accurate than the longer slide versions of this caliber in the Glock lineup. Now, when it comes to the recoil impulse, it's also a very soft shooting 45. That's probably because this does have a dual recoil spring. It's always had one in since its inception, but it seems to mitigate that recoil really well. It's still a little bit heavier than a 9mm, but still, if you are a new shooter or you have weak hands, I honestly think you can handle the Glock 30 pretty darn well. Alright, so now let's double the distance of the target. Let's see if this accuracy continues, and I'm going to shoot for the head on this silhouette. So let's go back to the range and see if I can continue to shoot this gun this well. And the group did open up a little bit for me, and that could be because of the shorter sight radius, but still the gun is giving me good practical or self-defense accuracy. I was shooting for the head on that silhouette, but I know if I was shooting for the center mass, all those rounds would have been good shots. So I'm really not going to complain about that because this gun is designed for self-defense and concealed carry. Now, speaking of this gun's accuracy, now we're going to shoot this from the bench. I'm going to set up the target at 25 yards, try to take as much of the human element out of the equation as possible, and just see what the best group I can get with it is. And for a subcompact pistol, that's actually pretty darn good for me at 25 yards. I'm not going to complain about that at all. I really feel like the practical range for this gun is 25 yards and less. Now, of course, you can shoot out targets at 50 yards, 75 yards, or 100 yards with this, but this gun is not designed to be a target gun. So getting this type of accuracy in such a small 45 ACP pistol is pretty darn good for me. Also, this pinky extension I think is really important important and adds to this accuracy. I really feel like it gives you so much more control. So I can definitely see why so many people add these grip extensions. All right, because this is a concealed carry pistol, obviously the next test I want to do is run some hollow points through it. Now, Glocks are known to be some of the most reliable pistols on the planet, so I don't expect to have any problems. But of course, I have to test this out. So let's go back to the range, put a couple of magazines of hollow points through it, and just make sure we have no failures. And of course, as expected, we had no failures whatsoever. We're getting very consistent ejections, and like always, I'm shooting this gun a little bit low and to the left. And I know some people right now are typing in the comment section, "You need to go get more training." I always say, please go check out my other range reports where I review guns like 2011s, and they're pretty much tack drivers for me. There's just something about the Glock frame and the trigger that just makes me shoot them a little bit low and to the left. And that could be for a number of different reasons, but all of those shots in a defensive scenario would be just fine. They all would have landed on the target and stopped the threat. All right, so the last test I want to do is to see how fast I can shoot this gun and how fast I can change the magazine out. So let's go back to the range, see if I can point shoot this gun, pull this trigger fast, and change the magazine out, get it back in action, especially if I had to use it in a self-defense scenario. And it looks like we had our first malfunction, a failure to feed. Now, I actually experienced this both on the Glock 21 and the 41. It seems like in many of the 45 ACP Glock pistols, we often get a malfunction where the round wants to nosedive into the mag and not feed into the chamber. I don't know if it's a magazine problem or if it's a gun problem, but this is something that is consistent across many of the Glocks chambered in 45. What's causing that, I do not know. Is it happening enough where I can say this gun is not reliable? Well, no. It's just something I have noticed. I never seem to have this issue with 40 and 9mm. But now let's talk about the magazine change. This was another issue I had, but this wasn't necessarily the gun's fault as much as it is the size of my hand. When I'm trying to drop the magazine, I am going to get a little bit of rubbing on the base plate of this magazine, and it prevents the mag from freely dropping out. I experienced this on many subcompact pistols because my hands are kind of big. Really, they're kind of big and wide. And so no matter how I hold the gun, unless I really alter my grip to make sure I have no contact with the bottom of the frame, I'm always going to get those magazines to stick. And this is one of those things I definitely recommend you trying out at the range if you can rent a gun like this before you would ever get one for yourself. See if this is something that you can get around or if it's going to snag on your hand. I really do try to remove my grip as far as I can, but I don't want to take it too far off the frame because I then have to readjust to get back on target. So that is what happened on this test. So 2 issues, but so far the range report has been great otherwise. I have no other issues with it, just if I'm going to shoot this thing fast or use it in a self-defense scenario, I have to take those two things into consideration. The reliability and changing out the magazines quickly. So what are my final thoughts on the Glock 30 Gen 3? Well, this, like all of the other Glocks, has been a very solid offering. I'm very impressed with the accuracy of this gun as compared to the 21 and the 41. If you like Glocks, I think you're going to like the Glock 30. If you like 45 ACP, I think you're going to like the Glock 30. I think the big downside to this, once again, is its size. I really feel like it needs to be thinner and shorter when it comes to its overall length. Now, they do offer a Glock 30 SF, which stands for short frame. And I believe they take a little bit of material off the back of the frame here. Now, this is one of the older ones, and I believe this exact frame size has been discontinued. I don't know how much shorter the short frame is, but I don't think it is altered by much. So, that's my thoughts on this gun, and the big detraction from it, I think, is the size. So, when I review the Glock 30S and the 36 in the future, maybe those concerns will be mitigated, but we'll have to see. So on my star system, how would I rate the Glock 30 Generation 3? Well, I'm going to easily give this 4 out of 5 stars. It's a solid gun. It shoots like all other Glocks, and honestly, I think it's more accurate than its full-sized big brothers. So let me know in the comments section below. Have you ever shot a Glock 30? Do you own a Glock 30? And the concerns that I'm having with it, especially when it comes to its dimensions, do they bother you like they bother me? And have you ever shot any of the smaller versions of this, the 30S or the 36, and do they fix that problem? So, as always, thanks for watching.